Institutions of Minsupala before the advent of Islam. So before we begin, I would just like first to define the institution. As institution is a society or organization founded for a religious, educational, social, or similar purpose. So in this topic, we will discuss to you what was Minsupala before the advent of Islam, or in other words, before pa sila na-influensahan og Islam ang Mindanao, Suluan, Palawan, wala pa yung Muslim ato nga time sa ilaha. So, unsay itsura sa Minsupala ato nga time? We will discuss to you their traditional socio-political organization, leadership and governance, conflict and conflict resolution, landholding practices, value system, and their religion. So, before that, um, there was record from a Chinese book nga na-record ito kung unsa nila pag name ang ang uban places sa Philippines. Like ani Mayi or Mayi, Moyi, identified by scholars either Mindoro or Manila. Kiamayan, Calamian. Pishoye or Visayas. Pakinong or Buswanga. Lusong or Luzon. Fangchasilan or Pangasinan. Mintulang or Mindanao. Sulu and Sulu. Palauyo or Palawan. So, naa diri sa last 3 ang Mindanao, Sulu, Palawan, which means naadtuan na pod sila og mga kani siya kay isa po daw ni siya nga ga-prove nga naa na day mga Asian neighboring countries nga naka-visit sa Philippines. So apil na dito ang Mindanao, Sulu, Palawan. It is also said nga isa ni sila nga nag-prove nga ang ato mga ancestors diri sa Minsupala sa una kay na ilang own culture and beliefs before pa man ang western civilization og ang abot sa Islam ani nga lugar. So the question that is centered in my topic is, how does traditional socio-political organization of the natives look like prior to the coming of Islam in Minsupala? So, socio-political organization here simply means barangay. So, ang question, unsa day itsura sa barangay sa una before katong wala pa ang mga Islam sa Minsupala? So first, it is in revisiting the pre-Islamic and pre-colonial past of these islands, it is important to recognize that our ancestors, despite idiosyncrasies, had developed an essentially homogeneous culture, and nature is the primary factor. Despite those sa ilang mga different characteristics, they still created a homogeneous culture, which means the same. Why nature is the primary factor? Because they live in the same environment. Ang Minsupala, Mindanao, Suluan, Palawan, it is an archipelago which composed of islands. So, naa sila mga dagat, naa sila mga bukid. So, same ilahang livelihood. That's why nakaingon sila nga homogeneous culture, which is they share a common way of life. It is also stated in the book na through flora and fauna, they favored similarities and not differences. So flora and fauna, just like what I've mentioned, katong sa ilang mga bukid maka-create sila og mga na sila the same ilang mga ma-produce nga agricultural crops or plants like rice, corn, root crops, vegetables, and fruits. Tapos sa ilang dagat na sila makuha nga mga marine products like seaweeds, tuna and sardines ang most common nga isda sa ilaha. So mo na ang nature is the primary factor. In the very first place, they came from the same racial stock, speak related languages, inhabit a contiguous territory, and share a common environment. So sa pinakasugod pa lang daw, same sila og race. They speak related languages, tapos inhabit a contiguous territory, which means kana they share the same border or kanang kuan lang sila kanang silingan-silingan. The hinterland, coastal, and riverine communities in the zone through Visayas and to Mindanao, Sulu, Palawan, people share a common way of life according to on-free corpus. So, muna siya ang hinterland, muna siya ang riverine, coastal, muna na siya sample sa mga, muna na siya mga example sa hinterland, coastal, and riverine nga mga lugar. So next, Philippine ethnic groups including Moros and Lumads may have different names for their traditional socio-political organizations, but their features and essence are basically the same. So lain-lain man daw ang name sa ilang barangay, pero ang feature o ang essence kay parehara ang feature, which means nga kanang nagyapon sila dato, tapos nagyapoy mga nagsunod sa dato ana. Tapos ang essence nga ang kanang organization kay nagtabang para naay protection ang ilang community ug naay kanang understanding ang ilang community kanang magkasinabtanay ang ilang community mo lang gyud the essence. So the barangay attained in its own right the status of a state. So ang barangay kay sa ilang barangay ato nga time kay mura na siya og syudad. Gamay man siya pero na siya status as a state. Na siya own territory, na siya people, na siya government og administrative control of group of life. It is a government that evolved around authority and administrative leadership of the dato who was always assisted by a council of elders composed of representatives from different kind group living within its territory. Like for example, ang higaunon nga tribe kay na sila dato tapos kanang higaon kinapos sila na pay mga lain-lain clan or family. So kada clan ay representative para mahimo siyang council. So next, the social stratification system of the barangay draws into three. The dato includes the dato and his family. The freemen includes warriors, merchants katong assigned every time na naay barter or trading, peasants katong mga farmers, tapos artisans or mga craftsmen. The dependents, which were mostly composed of deaf persons and prisoners of war. They were treated like lesser member of the family, and still they have the right to own properties, right to marry, and the right to protect and right of protection. So kaning dependents mo na siya ang pinaka lower nga class sa ilahang society or organization. The Baranganic society was more democratic compared to the societies of medieval Europe and ancient India, whose stratification was rigid. So ang ilang society or ilang Baranganic system is democratic, which means ang ilang people dito, the people has the right to choose or to decide what is good for the community. Their ways is not monopolized by the dato alone. Then ang ilang po mga tribes dito is naay laing-laing ways unsaon nila pag choose og dato. Like sa higaonon, the higaonon choose a dato not because of his bloodline but because of people's choice and decision. The subanin who gives anyone the chance to be timuay so long as he is powerful enough to protect his neighbors. The tausog, the traditional community leaders known as taumas, are not also based on bloodline by the material, moral, and intellectual process of the person. So aton during sa ato ang katong elementary or high school nga mga Philippine history class is kanang kuanta sa thought nga kung dato kay dapat ang iyahang pakaslan kay pareha pud sa iha og class or pareha sila og kanang status sa ilang society. So ang ilang dato kay kuan na flexible ang certification sa ilahang race didto means kanang pwede mag naay movement ang ilahang pag-choose sa ilahang ma-leader gikan man ka sa ubos or sa taas man kadaan naa kay chance nga mahimo as long as you can possess all the good qualities and kaya nimo ikuan ang mga responsibilities as a leader. So the chieftainship can be open to women who could demonstrate wisdom, magical powers, the ability to communicate with the unseen world, and performing sacred rituals. This is especially true among the Manobo who had witnessed the leadership of several lady datus known among them as babaihon. So, ang Manobo, especially ang Manobo, open sila nga lady pod or babae ang ilang mahimong leaders as long as again they can possess all the qualities and the duties of being a dato or being a leader. So I did not see or wala ko nakita og kanang picture sa Manobo nga lady ang ilang dato. Wala kayo siya picture sa Google pero naka-research ko og kanang mga dato during sa pre-Islamic nga mga times ato nga time. So mo sila kanang mga pictures nga naa sa ubos mo na siya ang mga ilahang mga mo mga dato sa una, mga dato ilahang mga leader. So that ends my report. Thank you for listening.
Hello everyone. Before I tackle about my topic, I just want to introduce myself first. I am Angeles Magpulang and I am 20 years old. So my report is about leadership and governance of pre-Islamic natives. This is part of our topic about the institution of Minsupala before the advent of Islam. So before we dig into the topic, first let's understand and know about what is leadership, governance, and pre-Islamic means. So let's start with leadership. Leadership is the ability to direct yourself and influence those around you. You have to have role model expected behaviors and leverage strengths so everyone feels fulfilled and valued. So in short, leadership is the power or the ability to lead other people, and of course in a positive and right way. Next is governance. So governance is the process of decision making and the process by which decisions are implemented or not to implement. Governance is more on decision and actions of a leader to the people that he or she run in a city, nation, or a tribe. Next is pre-Islamic. So pre-Islamic is the existing prior to the development and acceptance of Islam, pre-Islamic Arabs, pre-Islamic cultures of Asia Minor. Pre-Islamic is before the Islam. This is the era of which all people are pagans. We believe more than one God, like Anitos and other elements like mga Diyos like that. In this slide, it talks about the traditional concept of leadership among Murus and Lumads that are still very discernible even up to today. According oral traditions, there was even an instance in the pre-Islamic past that some tribes of Murus and Lumads used the same title in referring to their chieftains. So chieftains means their captain or dato in the tribe or clan. This statement, it talks about having their chieftain or dato, they have all the same requirements, characteristics, and qualities of finding their tribal leader. This is the picture of Murus, and this is the picture of Lumads. Among the Manubo, Subanin, Tiroray, and Magindanaon, and these are other tribes, they used to call their leaders Timuay before the arrival of Sharif Kabungsuan. This is the image of Sharif Kabungsuan or Sharif Muhammad Kabungsuan. He was the first Sultan of Maguindanao in the Philippines, and he was the one who preached Islam to the native tribes around the region. So in this slide, this is the image of Najib Salibay. According to him, the Magindanaoans were indistinguishable from the Manubos and Tirorays, as all other groups shared a common ecology and were the same culture. Pasabot ni Najib Salibay ani nga, ang Magindanaoans daw kay lahi ra sa ubang tribe, kay napod sila own culture and napod sila own nga common ecology nga gina-share. And in continuation, the inhabitants of Slangan, Maguindanao, Katituan, and those of all the other settlements of the valley were pagans and were very similar to the present Tirorays in language and worship. So for those who are wondering what is pagans, pagans is the one or the people of ancient religion that worship several gods, or they called it polytheistic. Next is Dato. It's the term used for honorific title in almost Muro and Lumad tribes. Dato is still widely used even up to today. And in fact, many oral traditions would tell us that when Islam was introduced to Mindanao, communities and tribes who accepted the Islamic faith conveniently changed the title Dato into Sultan, Imam, Haji, Kadi, and other Islamized titles. Pasabot lang ani nga ang title kay gaka-evolve from Dato to Sultan, Imam, Haji, and Kadi. I will also discuss the characteristics of Muro and Luma tribal chieftain. So, Dato always starts by earning the respect of his people in the community through bravery, generosity, and wisdom. Pasabot lang ani para ang Dato makuha niya ang respect sa iyang people. So, dapat na ay gid siya bravery or kanang way kahadlok isog. Then, generosity mahatagon. Wisdom, kananay sense of humor, like wise action, mga wise decision, and wise thought. Then, among the Higaonon, the territory of the Dato is called Gaop, and the people therein are called Hisakop. So, we're familiar of the word Sakop. Like, we know that because it is also our dialect, like Sakop or Lipon, diba? Next is, Dato is not dictatorial as he has to consult the Council of Elders in almost all matters requiring decision that affect the community. So, pasabot daw, ang Dato, kailangan po siya og consultation sa Council of Elders, like mga dako sad sa ila ang tribe. Then, the Council of Elders are usually headmen of the families and clans who serve as bona fide representatives of the people in the Gaop. And this means that even before the Renaissance period in Europe, the Muros and Lumads had been observing and implementing the so-called democracy in the field of governance. Under the traditional setup, governance is in the hands of many and not monopolized by the Dato alone. So pasabot lang nga dili lang ang Dato ang nagpadagan sa iyang tribe or clan, naapod siya katabang or naapod siya support from the Council of Elders. He needs the elders' opinion and consultation para pod ma-implement niya ang iyang mga plano para sa tribe. And to the Manubo, becoming an Igbujag or Dato. So kaning Manubo is other tribe pod nga dapat daw ang Dato or Igbujag dapat daw becoming selfless. He should think of his people first than himself. So dapat unahan sa iyang mga tao ay ang iyang kaugalingon. Next is he should bother to know the problems confronting his constituents and help them in their needs. Dapat gid daw makabalo siya sa mga problema sa iyang mga sakop para iyang matabangan. The next is he must ensure that his people are harmoniously living with one another and encourage peaceful living with neighboring communities. So dapat niya i-ensure or siguraduhon nga iyang mga sakop kay okay ang dagan sa kinabuhi, like walay problema, and always niya i-check nga maayo ang ilaang relationship towards each other. And just like the manubo po, the mansaka expect the matikadong or mansaka dato. Aning mansaka, other tribe also. And ang ilaa po, ang characteristic sa ilaang dato or matikadong is to be equipped with leadership qualities like bravery through knowledge of the tribe's customary laws, wisdom, and articulateness. Pareha lang gyapon ang ilaang characteristic. Dapat gyapon brave ang ilaang dato. And he must also be fair, morally upright, and financially capable, especially during conflict mediation and in resolving feuds. So, dapat fair ang ilaang dato, especially kung naay mga circumstances like away-away, mga conflict. So, dapat fair lang iya ang kaning paglantaw for both sides. And also, dapat financially capable. Dapat na-upload siya kaning financial to support to his people. And also for the Subanin, Timuay or Shifting, Subanin from other tribe as well. Ilaa pong Shifting or Timuay must possess not only fighting skills and financial capability, more importantly, he must be reliable, emotionally mature, industrious, fair, responsible, and a good example in the community. So, ang pasabot lang nga, dili lang kay naa siya fighting skills, maayo siya muaway, and naa siya financial, but importante po daw nga kaning emotionally mature and kaning matabangon, and also kaning masaligan, and dapat po good example sa ilaang katawhan. He must not be a drunkard, a coward, a thief, or a tyrant. Dapat dili palahubog, dili kaning talawan, dili kaning thief. And he should be principled, wise, and a good implementer of the laws of his tribe. So dapat gid siya a good leader or a good role model. To the Higaunon, they considers integrity and sincerity as the important qualities that a dato must possess. Integrity and sincerity means honesty, goodness, rightness of a leader, because a rightful leader must have a virtue and morality. The dato must also be someone who knows how to recite the dasang, sing the limbay, and narrate the bunsuda. So this is the origin stories of the Higaunon people and ulaging or history. He must learn the talawagon or the spirit commonly invoked during the performance of singampo, ilaang prayer rituals. Although the Moro chieftain would adopt the Islamic title of Sultan, he nonetheless is still the traditional dato whose leadership is considered ideal when he is capable of protecting and helping his people. Pasabot lang nga bisag nalahi na ang ngalan or title sa ilaang leader, like from dato to sultan, maulang yapon ang characteristic sa ilang pagka-leader, like protecting and helping their people. And this is their other characteristics. He is expected to serve his community by being there all the time. Ang expected na nga dapat na asya gid sa iya ang mga sakop all the time para mualagad. And also, he has no salary and observes no limit in his office hours. Pasabot lang nga wala siya sweldo and wa pud siya limit sa oras sa iyang pagtrabaho. He is in the hands-on leader 24/7, so to speak. So, aya yung pagtrabaho kay sa mantaman orasa. And in times of war, he must lead his people in battle. So, pag naay away, siya gyud ang mulid or maguna sa ilaang battle. And in times of famine, he is expected to feed everyone. So kung magkalisod-lisod gyud sila, expected gyud nga ang dato mo feed sa iyang people, like iyang tabangan. When somebody dies, he is supposed to give the biggest donation. So kung mamatay sa iyang sakop, siya mo'y dapat dako kayong ihatag nga donation. And when a sakop gets married, he needs to offer the biggest wedding gift. So kung naapoy kasyon sa iya ang sakop, muhatag po siya dako kaayo nga regalo. When his constituents fight, he must mediate and resolve the conflict, means by sharing and distributing his wealth to appease the offended party and to ensure restorative justice. So, kung naay mag-away, so iya yung responsibility para ayuhon ang conflict, means by sharing. So, maghatag siya og wealth para okay na ang offended party. The only payment that Dato or Sultan gets is the genuine respect and loyalty of his people. So, pasabot lang nga ang sweldo or payment nga madawatan lang sa Dato or Sultan is ang kaning genuine lang nga respect sa iya ang mga katawhan. And there's a saying in the lowland, the one who settles the conflict would be the one paid. Ato ang mga lowland, kung naay conflict katong mag-settle sa problem kay mabayran. And the lawyer who resolves the problem would be compensated. Pasabot lang equivalent ra pud iyang madawatan nga payment. Counterbalance lang. Yet in the mountains, the Dato would shoulder all the expenses. And we can tell that there is a big difference. So that's the end of my report. Thank you and God bless us all.
Good morning, everyone. In today's report, we're gonna tackle about how do the native resolve conflicts in a traditional way. We always conclude sa atong hunahuna nga pag naay away mahitabo or lalis in both parties, naa jud nay mahitabo nga war, di ba? Di jud na malikayan sa atong kinabuhi nga makipag-away. To claim that there was absolute peace in pre-Islamic or pre-colonial days of Minsupala is a certain groundless. Every culture and community in the world must have experienced conflicts and wars at some point in their respective histories. Yet, our interest does not lie on above violent institution but on how traditional Moro and Lumad communities resolve conflicts. We opt to have this as our focus and concern because indigenous conflict is most instructive. Maskin kita nga naa man jud tay kanya-kanyang problema nga giatubang ug di malikayan nga naapoy kaaway sa atong panimalay, and in this case nga mas concerned ta sa mga problema sa society. Kung basihan sa atong society manggod, in between Christians and Muslim, kabalo man jud ta nga lisod kay makipag-negotiate sa mga Muslim people because lahi ilang perspective, and kung ipugos pa jud nato kay mapadulong na sa away and gilikayan nato na mahitabo. In the Western system, conflicts are resolved by formally filing a cases in courts, hiring lawyers, and waiting for the judge to finish hearing the case in order to render his judgment. While in indigenous system, every avenue is optically explored not just to resolve the conflict, but to ensure reconciliation between both parties. This is the essence of indigenous terms like husay among the Bisaya, pagpapatawad at sandugo among the Tagalogs, kapeperlay among the Maranao, diandi among the Higaonon, pagsulot among the Maguindanao and Tausog, and etc. Usually, ang Western people is muditsudayon silag filing a case without masinsinang pag-uusap man lang, while ang indigenous people is taas silag process, agian, and nagdepende sila sa ilang gitawag na dato, wherein they referred to them as their leader and advisor. Also, they need guidance and enough judgment among elders. Filing a case in the courts in Western system and reconciliation in indigenous system. Another unique aspect in indigenous conflict resolution is that their dato does not solely render judgment but guidance of the elders and the consensus of the community that matters most in the decision-making process. Through this, check and balance is ensured so that the dato is prevented from becoming a tyrant or a dictator. As a symbol of unity in the community, he must be always consultative to the elders and uphold the community consensus in crucial decisions. This is part of the customary laws, and the dato must follow this, or else he will earn the wrath of the Almighty, which could mean his downfall as community leader. In Moro and Lumad tribes, dato and respected members of the council elders also act as mediators. They do not only facilitate communication and negotiation, but also assume responsibility for raising the required blood money called mangad. The mediators may include respectable relatives of the conflicting parties, tribal leaders from other communities, or women with influence in the area. Generally, the process starts by identifying the peace mediator or negotiator, who is respected by both parties. The initiative may come from one of the disputants or from a third party. Once the mediator is identified and assuming he accepts the invitation, then he starts coming to both parties trying to arrange a peaceful meeting between the two. An opening ritual is performed in the presence of conflicting parties. It is the general rule that both parties should refrain from shouting, pointing of fingers, and using of harsh words. The dato must ensure that the two parties take part in a balakaw, which means they are given the chance to speak. When the complaints are presented, the dato starts the process of checking and investigating facts and fallacies. As pointed out already, he needs to confer every now and then with other elders in the community before coming up with the next course of action. So ang mediator moadto siya in both parties to hear their side and arrange a peaceful meeting before they have a ritual. Decision on the case would depend upon the nature and gravity of the offenses. For a minor offense, it can be settled through paying of moral damages, while for a major offense, death is the corresponding penalty. The dato must be creative enough to find a win-win solution for everyone, otherwise he will be dragged into the conflict if his decision or suggestion fails to please everyone. Even in cases involving death, the mediating dato can always beg the conflicting parties to accept the blood money for reconciliation. Blood money is a money paid to the family of a murder victim. And the dato can always argue that death will do no good and therefore be articulate to convince the offended party to compensate to pay for the moral damages instead. Among the Maranaos, the reconciliation process is generally facilitated by tracing their Tarsila or clan genealogy. This is a great mechanism for reconciliation as Maranao clans and families are always related in one way or another by sanguinity or affinity. The settlement of rido or feud among the Maranaos could even end up in intermarriage to ensure the conflict does not recur. By letting a man and a woman from the two clans marry, the feuding families become one and united. Example is shown in the picture, the Maranao intermarriage, wherein both families arranged their daughters and son into a marriage. For the Higaonon, a dispute must be ended by a ritual called tampuda. Theoretically, two things could happen at the conclusion of the ritual. First is end the dispute violently by all-out war. Second, peacefully end the conflict through reconciliation and forgetting the offenses. Tampuda as a ritual starts a pandawit or a prayer. A pig, chicken, and a piece of rattan are then offered to the spirits. In the presence of conflicting parties, the dato will slaughter the offered animals and cut the rattan using a bolo while saying a ritual. The officiating dato will cut the rattan while shouting, as the rattan is cut, so the conflict between the two parties shall end. Here is the example of tampuda wherein they offered a pig and has a rattan to cut while saying the ritual prayer. As a rule, the dato pours all his energy to cut the rattan if possible, not reaching the third strike, so that's more often than not conflict cases that reach. The tampuda ritual usually had happy endings. Sandugo or blood compact is also known as institution in the pre-Islamic days among the Moros and Lumad. Among the Bilaan, the sealing ritual after a conflict was resolved is called sadyandi. This ritual is made by making a little incision on the left chest of the conflicting individuals to take a drop of blood which will be mixed in a glass of wine. The blood obtained from the left chest is very symbolic as it is near the heart of the individuals, suggesting sincerity of the sadyandi participants. The conflicting parties then drink from the same glass to signify their agreement that they become blood brothers. The Tausug recognize this ceremony as pag-inom dugo. So by drinking their mixed blood in their glass, it means that they are now brothers by blood. The picture said to be the Sandugo or the Blood Compact Monument located in Bohol. That's all for today and thank you for listening.
Good morning, everyone. My topic for today is land holding system in the pre-colonial days. Life in the barangay was essentially communal. Land preparation, planting, harvesting, as well as food gatherings. Fishing and even house building, done cooperatively by neighbors and families. This is the origin term of bayanihan, which basically refers to reciprocity, mutual help, and support and cooperative labor in the community. Bayanihan is a core essence of the Filipino culture. It is helping out one's neighbor as a community and doing a task together, thus lessening the workload and making the job easier. It is also called the community spirit. Here are some examples of bayanihan. The picture shows that the people carrying the house and transfer it to another place. Other terms of bayanihan is pagtinabangay in Bisaya, awidan in Maranao. According to Onofre Corpus, wrote that it is describing the communism of the old barangays. Nowadays, we rarely see people carrying the house because most of our houses nowadays are concrete and permanent. But it is still applied in some remote areas in our country. Historical and anthropological evidences also suggest that the indigenous land tenure system in the pre-Islamic or colonial days were characterized by communal ownership. When we say communal, it is of relating to a community characterized by collective ownership and use of property, participated in, shared, or used in common by members. Communal ownership. The Moros and Lomas actually mean communal stewardship. This is because everybody believes the air, water, and everything in this world, including the land, are only entrusted to the tribes by their real owner, whom the natives variously called magbabaya, magbubuhat, bathala, taganiit, manaman, etc. that refer to the notion of the almighty creator and sustainer. Simply put, the dato only serve as the manager and overseer of an area entrusted to the tribe by the Almighty or by the spirits. The dato is the one who leads his people and know the occurrence to his domain, while his followers only serve as stewards of the assigned parcels of a lot. They may have usufructuary rights over the land, but no one has the right to sell it to other people, for they cannot be owned individually and privately. A usufruct means is a real right that authorizes the temporary use and enjoyment of another's property with the basic obligation of preserving its form and substance.
Good day, everyone. Our topic is institutions of Minsupala before the advent of Islam. In my report is I tackle the value system. What is value system? A value system refers to the order and priority an individual or society grants to ethical and ideological values. While two individuals or groups may share a set of common values, they may not give equal weight or preference to those values. Here are the value system in Minsupala. When Islam was introduced to Mindanao, communities and tribes who accepted the Islamic faith conveniently changed the title Datu into Sultan, Imam, Haji, Qadi, and other Islamized titles. The Higaonon elders and Datu must keep an eye that a lady whom a Higaonon gentleman likes will surely participate. Two things could happen during the event. His love is accepted or his love rejected. Once accepted, they become couple, but if it was rejected, he would scream, pronouncing that he likes someone but he was excluded. A score of oral traditions of Philippine and Southeast Asians origins are suggestive that flourishing communities with advanced cultures already existed even before Western civilization was introduced in this part of the world. Philippine ethnic groups, including the Moros and Lumads, may have different names for their traditional socio-political organizations, but their feature and essence are basically the same. For example, among the Higaonon, the barangay finds its equivalent in the term gaop, while the Maranao Pingampong practically epitomizes the network and dynamics of the old baranganic societies. After all, every culture and community in the world must have experienced conflicts and wars at the same point in their respective histories. Example for this: we cannot deny that the violent Rido and Pangangayaw were well-known parts of our cultural institutions. We may have different names for it, but the marks are generally similar. For the Higaonon, a dispute must be ended by a ritual called tamboda. Theoretically, two things could happen at the conclusion of the ritual: end of dispute violently by all out war, or peaceful in the conflict through reconciliation and forgetting the offenses. Tambuda has a ritual starts with a pandalawit or a prayer. To the Marano, Maratabat is thought to be the fundamental motivating force that serves as basis for the judging a person as a as good or bad, not so much in terms of consequences of his acts, but rather in the terms of the extent to which he has matarabat. Thus matarabat has its own merits and demerits. On the extreme end, it can probably cause the disintegration of Maranao society, yet on the other, the same can also be directed to uplift the said society to greater heights. The pre-Islamic and pre-colonial past serve as the lost connection between the present Filipinos. By looking back, present generations of Muslims, Lumads, and Christians are a reminder that our ancestors, at the same point in our history, shared many commonalities than differences. And that's all of my report. And yeah.
Our last topic is all about religion. In this topic, we will tackle about some features of the native indigenous religion before the coming of Islam in Minsupala. Moros tribe and Lumad tribe are now practicing
Muslims and Christians. But not all Moros and all Lomad are nagpractice. Uban lang nga nagpractice na po'y uban nagpabilin as Moros and Lumads. Ang of pre-Islamic and pre-Christian religion are makita pa dyan po nato sa ila ang belief system. Muapira day ni siya nga mens in the form of superstitious or mga paniniwala nila. Tudlo sa or are not part of the Islamic and Christian teaching. Murag wala bitaw silang mga beliefs sa una, wala natudlo sila dira na din mo appear ang mga elements. Old religion and new religion, if you combine these two religion, it will result on what anthropologists would call folk Islam and folk Christianity. There are two monotheistic religion, which is the Islam and Christianity. These two monotheistic religion is the one who introduced the concept of God Almighty. Before the advent of monotheistic religion, the native already know about Supreme Being. The Supreme Being is the one who created and sustained everything, but they did not call their Supreme Being as Allah or God. Instead, it has a various name and a different tribe. Magbabaya and Subanen, Higaonon, Bukidnon in Mansaka. Magbubuhat naman in Bisaya. Bathala o May Kapal in Tagalog. Mandaragan in Bagubo, and Tagiinit in Libabawon. Maranao are used to believe in tonongs. Tonongs are thought to be benevolent unseen beings, or sa akong research, tonongs means evil spirits. According to Epic Darangin, kani siya nga epic is epic sa mga Maranao. Tonongs daw is originated from the union of Raha and Derapata to a karibang or a water nymph named Potre Reynalot. Then they begot 2 children or nagkaanak sila 2 children. The invisible or the mipayag and the ordinary. The invisible became an ancestor of the Tonongs and nagpromise daw siya nga iyang tabangan iyang ang ordinary brother and protektahan or help and protect his ordinary brother. Then kaniyang ordinary brother became an ancestor of the Maranao. Then ang mga Maranao daw is kanang i-invoke bitaw nila, invoke the tunong every time nga naay mahitabo sa ila or kana bitang magkasakit sila or naay mga danger inana. Then also i-invoke sad nila to protect their crops from destruction sa mga pest or kanang mga natural calamities. Maranaos also perform rituals called kalilang. Mag-perform sila ng rituals para mangayo sila og bali guidance nga if mag-fishing sila or mag-hunting unta naa sila makuha or daghan sila makuha para naa sila makaon. Then during the ceremony, daghan kanang mga musical instrument nga giplay para sa mga gong, mga kulintang. Then maghalad na sila og chicken and other things kasabay sa pag while sounds ang music maghalad sila og mga chicken. Balik. In Manobo, ang mga mountains, mga falls ug mga land and crops didto sa ila gi-consider jud nila as sacred jud kay para sa ila. Then, they believe in good and bad spirits. Mga unseen spirits nga nikauban sa ila or kanang nagpuyo sa area nila. Then, very cautious jud kay na sila kung moadto sila sa mga place nga nga walay mga tawo or walay gapuyo nga place para di sila kuan og disturbance or to avoid noise and disturbance. Then, careful when choosing area for planting. Magdepende na sila sa omen and signs. Kay kana lagi dang omen makakita na og future, maka-foretell og future. Then they also believe nga kanang omen gikan na siya sa spirits nga nag-guard sa trees and forest. So kung asa ang kuan sa omen, didto sila magplant kay para successful ilang pagplant, or kanang bitong walay or dili maun sa ilang plants, dili mamatay. Then one particular omen is the sounds of limokon or turtle dove. Then they believe, ang mga manubo nag-believe nga kana daw limokon is the messenger of the Mother Earth. According to Rivu Masinaring, ang mga manubo daw is mag-decide na sila og isa ka place kung asa i-held ila ang ritual, which is panlawag or panluyo. Then ang mga farmers is manawag na sila og spirit of the plants called kalayag kay ay kuan para sendan sila og omen. Kay nag-believe yun sila nga ang mga trees, ang mga plants, even gani ang bato daw kay naay spirits. Then dapat daw ang portion of planting is kanang limpyo jud siya. Then naay good sign and bad sign ang omen. Ma-consider ang good sign kung sample nag-cut sila mga grass dira, dayon after pila ka months or pila ka weeks nakadungog sila og sound sa limukon. Mao na dahil lang gi-consider as a good sign. Then bad sign naman is kanang call of limukon coming from wrong direction. Makuano na siya kung sample kanang place is kanang hugaw or bago pagilimpyuhan, murag inana bitaw, dapat i-stop jud daw na kay kung i-insist jud nila nga i-continue na siya kay murag kay naay incident mahitabo, which is magkasakit ang anak then mamatay. Then after naay mahitabo nga good sign, ang mga farmers is working together under a labor sharing system, which is they call akat. Will immediately take part in a ritual performed by a baylan. Then sa ilang ritual, maghalad na sila og kanang beheaded chicken or kanang ang gipugutag ulong na chicken. Then ang blood sa chicken is dito na nila iyabo sa kanang na sila gikalot nga sayuta bitaw, magbangag na sila sa yuta. Then dito nila iyabo ang blood sa chicken. For Subani naman, ilaang planting season is communion with spirits. Then they have a special ritual called pangasi. And every year man mahitabo ang ritual, diba? So every year sad na sila mag set aside og seeds para gamiton nila sa ilaang ritual. Then kanang ritual is it makes human beings work with the invisible spirits of the earth. Bali murag nagkasinabot or nagkahiusa ang human beings and spirits. Bali sila magkuhan silang perform sa silang ritual. Then ang mga spirits kay murag mo grant bitaw sila ang gipang wish. Then ang mga subanin kay they does not plow the field or use bladed tools in the tilling soil. Di daw na sila magamit or di na sila magpadugo kung sample during the ritual, di na sila maggamit ng mga bladed tools, di na sila magpadugo. Instead, magkuano na sila, magbangag na sila sa yuta. Ilang gamiton pagbangag is wooden table. Then dito nila ihulog ang seeds nga ilang na set aside. Dito nila ihulog sa ilang gibangag. Then they believe nga ang mga stars daw and ang mga guardian sa crops kay murag i-grant bitaw to or ikanang ipabunga ang ilaang gitanom nga gihulog nila nga seed dito sa holes. Kato nga kuan holes kay dili na dito nila tabunan og yuta pasagdaan. Other ethnic groups have similar rituals para sa sila og mga rituals, which is mo recognize sila og mga unseen beings like nga nag-guardian sa Mother Earth, like kanang musamba sila sa mga kahoy, sa mga bato. Pero the important figure daw nga sa rituals, the important figure sa rituals is ang pag-perform jud sa ceremonies. The baylan is mauni ang ilaang ginasamba. It acts as a mediator between the mortals and the spirit world, believed to be capable of conveying message, thought to have powers to foretell the future and see the supernatural spirits or makakita siya sa future. Then, ang mga natives is muduol kay Baylan para mangayo og healing and protection. Next topic is about concluding peace value or statement. Pre-Islamic and pre-colonial past it is a long-lost connection between the present Filipinos. Communalism that characterized of pre-Islamic or pre-colonial is sila ang nag-remind sa tuwa nga naatay social obligations to our fellow Filipinos like bayanihan, awidan, and pagtinabangay. Nakatry mi og kanang bayanihan which is katong among balay is kanang gitibalan gibalhin sa laing place pero duol ra to siya. Then if we kanang gusto jud ta nga ang country to stay intact para ma-stay intact jud ang country, dapat all Filipinos is given equal opportunity, like especially to economic, political, educational, and cultural advancement. Dapat ipatupad jud nato ni siya nga quote, no Filipino should be left behind sa kuan man sa poverty or sa ignorance. Dapat kuan jud ta kanang dungan jud ta angat, wala jud dapat mabilin nga Filipinos. Then dapat dili na to i-down sila nga gusto ko ako'y makaunag angat. Dapat equal. So that's all. Thank you.